The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's great to see so many of you here so bright and early in the year. I'm pleased to say that at the very last moment, we've organized a program for the coming 3 months. In February, we're going to have Faz Ahmad, an old friend of mine, colleague, who now works for a humanitarian organization and finds it very fulfilling, and he's going to tell us about the role of information technology in that sort of development work. But today we've got a really exciting program. Peter Leeson, who's spoken to us previously on a quality theme, is going to talk about how you measure quality, how you set quality goals, and why sometimes setting up processes is not the same as actually achieving progress. So I'm going to get out of the way and let him tell us all about that. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. I'm going to talk to you about the Vitruvian Manifesto, which is a bit more than measurement and all what Emil just said. Before I start, I am going to be using a tool called Menti, which you can access by either going to menti.com and entering the code on the screen, 9588776, or by scanning the QR code. Normally, Menti is being used for polls and questions and surveys and things like that. I'm going to ask you to use it for feedback at the end, but during the actual presentation, it is there to ask a question. So if you ask a question or make a comment on Menti, it will come up on my screen immediately, and I can then decide to respond or not. And I have put up a Menti slide towards the end of the presentation, which will include all outstanding questions. So let's begin. I got a lot to go through. I was told by someone I appreciate immensely earlier today that I am overly optimistic with the number of slides I'm going to show. So that is warning you. It's going to be a bit of a race. I've got a lot of stuff, but you will be able to get copies of the slides afterwards. And most slides don't have that much information, a few of them do. So let's get started. And I'm going to start where we all start in establishing the basics of work in a typical engineering or development organization. So the idea in most organizations, well, in all organizations that actually develop something, is you have a vision, you have an idea. From that, you establish some goals, you create a plan, you do some work, and you deliver something. It is the basis. Everybody does that. And most organizations have understood that they need to manage this. In other words, measure the status of the work as it is happening, so that they can replan and correct things. And of course, now that we have metrics on board, we can use those metrics to find out how we can improve our planning practices so as to make sure that we are planning more effectively next time around. And that all works fine until something completely unexpected happens. So we have got risk awareness because stuff happens. We discover things along the way, and we need to maturely decide how to build this into our plan or to our vision as necessary. This is what I call the mature approach to managing the work. And if you're wondering where my logo comes from, this is it. This graphic gives us 4 triangles, which show us the known and the unknown, the past and the future, which largely gives us a unified approach to the way things are working that corresponds to the traditional concept of how your brain is split up. left brain, right brain, limbic, cerebral. Of course, we all know that thoughts in the brain don't come from one area, but come from communication between them, which is why we had little flashes going between different areas. What I am asking from projects, from the work you are doing, is that you basically manage your project with the full brain. So using intelligence, because that is where you can decide how you are going to react. This is where you decide how you're going to react to external stimuli and also how you are going to influence the world around you for good or for bad. Now, if I want to motivate you to do something as a manager, I need to focus on all four aspects of this. In other words, I need to make sure I've covered left brain, right brain, I've covered limbic and cerebral. And basically that means that the first thing I need to do is make sure that you accept that something needs to be done. So you accept that whatever we're doing right now is not working, is not sufficient. I accept, I understand what it is about. I know I have to do something. The second thing is I need to provide you the ability to do it. So I need to provide you the resources, the time, the money, the equipment, whatever it is you need to do it. If you don't have the ability, there's no point in accepting things. The next one is slightly more difficult, and that is the aspiration. I want you to want. I have to motivate you to be motivated to do it. I need you to really want to achieve that. If you don't really want to, you accept you have the ability, but you will not do it. This is why so many people don't exercise or eat as healthily as they should be and so on. You know you should be doing it. You have the ability there, but do you really want to? And the most difficult aspect of this is the attitude, where I need to influence your attitude. In other words, make you react spontaneously to the right things. So I need to get you to have a positive attitude. So when we're talking here, I am talking about whole brain engineering and management. This is my starting point. This is where I go from. This is the way I wish every organization and every project worked. I know most projects don't work like this. A lot of people think that their management actually believes that this is enough, right? I've got an idea, let's plan, let's do the work and deliver something. I have even known a few managers who believe that this is all you need. Just do the work and give me products. Shame, but I'm not going to work with them straight away. I probably will have to at some point. But the ones I want to approach is the ones I want to talk about are the ones who have got basic management in place. So I'm not even talking about improvement here. I'm not talking about risk management. You're planning to do the work, you're doing the work, you're measuring progress, you're feeding back as necessary. And the problem we have here is that most people, including most managers, do not understand how to use the concept of measuring. Measuring has been promoted since Taylor and his scientific management concepts, that you need to measure things. And unfortunately, when we talk about measuring, typically we will measure the things that are easy to measure. We're going to measure time and cost. It's simple, it's quantified, it's ready. And by focusing on time and cost, we are pushing people to deliver cheap and quick, and ignoring the concepts of quality, innovation, and improvement. This is a major flaw in many organizations. We want to measure quality, innovation, and improvement because that's where the future lies. Now, Taylor, of course, that was a long time ago, and it's not really done anymore. Well, actually, it is, because Taylorism brought on management by numbers, which led to process focus, increasing standards, and more recent activities like Six Sigma, Lean, and Agile, which are very much focused, remaining the concept of deliver fast and deliver cheap. Someone is telling me that the bandwidth seemed to be fluctuating. Sorry about that. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can follow. I fear that my wife might be watching Netflix at the same time. One of the problems with this approach is what I am going to call the Bell-Curve Tyranny. So the Bell-Curve Tyranny is where we are measuring stuff and we are saying, look, if you're between the two middle bars, that's good, and everything else is bad. Now, the Bell-Curve concept is a great tool to measure the status of things. But as far as I am concerned, the bell curve is a phenomenon and it is not a thermostat. It's good for understanding the probability of success, the probability of doing things or not doing things. It is not a thermostat. It should not be an objective in itself. I'm not criticizing measurement. I believe control charts are extremely good. Control charts are very useful. They allow us to identify there's a period where things were going better than usual. What happened here? Why did we have this trend of good stuff? And why did we have these failures of different levels at different times? I can go in and find out what was going wrong. I can find out why we had this sudden drop in quality, what happened. This is all very good, but remember, you're measuring products, you're measuring process, you are not measuring people. The moment you use this to measure people, you have lost the value of the metrics because people will cheat. So we're now going to move into the management concepts. The role of management is very simply to provide the resources necessary for your team to produce the best quality possible. And that includes time and budget, which are the things we were talking about measurement, but it includes knowledge, tools, equipments, structure, protection, realistic objectives, and so on. You are a good manager only if your team is effective, because that's what your role is. Having all your management diplomas is pointless if you cannot make your team effective. There have been two basic approaches to management in the past. There's been mechanistic approaches and systematic approaches. So I'm going to start here with the mechanistic approach, which is one that you're probably familiar with. People are interchangeable. A task is a task. Everyone is out to cheat the company. So we need a command and control, a strong hierarchy, clear measured objectives, formalization, standardization. We're going to put in place everything we can to control the people doing the work, including open plan officers. Open plan officers come from factories, okay? It's a concept that started off in factories. It went into old offices where there was the manager, sometimes on a little stage, who could see everybody, make sure that you came in on time, were doing your work, didn't take too many toilet breaks. And it got carried over bizarrely into modern offices modern offices where we are doing knowledge-based work. When you're doing knowledge-based work, we know, and we've known for a long time, that it doesn't work. the level of noise, the interruptions, the walkarounds, the people listening into you, the interruptions, the trying to hear what the other person is talking about on their phone, all this is disruptive and brings down your productivity significantly. It comes from the old principle that people are basically just tools. So this book, One Child, uses the expression that the Chinese experiment of forcing people to only have one child was treating women as if they were levers. You move it up and down, you train it, you make it happen. The result of this is that engineers start having to follow the rules, do what they're told to do, obey the orders, follow the processes, just be there, do their time. It creates boredom. It discourages the thought process in favor of obeying orders. And if you are talking with intelligent, creative people, it is extremely demoralizing. I worked in an organization a few years ago where there has a bright young lad that had just got hired, was full of ideas, full of enthusiasm and energy. And I told his manager, make the best of him before you've killed him off in 6 months' time. Because indeed, the structure of processes, of open offices, of standards, of doing as you're told, basically is killing off our engineers in order to create zombie engineers. No inner life, no understanding of life, no desire to progress. Now, I don't want to generalize this too much. Someone put up the question, do you agree you can be an effective team despite your manager? Yes, but it's extremely difficult, and I believe your manager will do their utmost to destroy the effectiveness of the team, to bring you back into the curve, bring you back inside the bell. Okay, you have to be in there. Do as you are told. Do as you are. You were hired apparently because you were intelligent and knew all kinds of things. And we've now reached the point where you're not paid to be intelligent and to have ideas. You're not paid to think. Don't change stuff. Stay within the bell curve. Follow every step. This comes back to the old analytical deconstructionism, which was foundational in Western civilization. The idea of analytical deconstructionism is that we break it down. If every piece works properly, then when we put them all together, it should work properly. I tend to compare this to the surgeon who is going to tell you your heart is in perfect condition, your lungs are in perfect condition, your kidneys are in perfect condition. The only reason you did is because I took out your heart, your lungs, and your kidneys in order to analyze them. The analytical deconstructionism doesn't always work the way people hope. It's not because every component works that the whole thing works. Newton tried to correct this to some extent and turned it to mathematical principles and laws. Newton decided that everything happened because of immutable, unchangeable laws like mathematics, but this included the laws of physics and included the Christian creationist design laws. So everything had been set once for all and could not be changed. He was counteracted by Darwin, who said, actually, that's not unchanging. Things are changing continuously, and most changes are completely random and small And if they're helpful, they stay, they are put into the gene pool, and we use them to increase. If they are not helpful, then they're eliminated naturally and automatically, with the result is that most developments are wasted and only a few succeed. This concept was pushed one step further by Max Planck and Albert Einstein when they created quantum mechanics, quantum physics. And this showed us that tiny changes, microscopic changes or less than microscopic changes, could have unforeseeable enormous consequences. It also showed that things can be in two contradictory states at the same time, just like you can hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. The concept here of quantum mechanics moved on into the current system of ecosystems, which is the opposite of the deconstruction approach. In this case, we are saying that every component depends on the whole thing. If one element is changed, every component will change to some level. So we've actually got now, instead of every component works, therefore the whole thing works, we've come to the whole thing works, therefore every component works. And this is important because society, and that includes your work environment, your team, your department, is not a set of individuals, it is a set of relationships. It is a set of interactions, of communication channels and contacts. You are defined by the relationships you have with other people, with technology, with your past, with different options. You are actually a unique product of a combination of DNA, of your ancestry, yes, your education, but also every trip you've taken, every book you've read, every piece of music you've listened to, every accident you've had. And this makes you completely unique in the world. It gives you a visibility onto things that nobody else has. So you can see you have got a set of relations and understanding that is completely unique to you, even if you're an identical twin. Now, where this becomes interesting is when we start making a team out of this, because it allows us to focus on the crossroads. I see things differently from you. If we compare, we can see that we can build these two things together and create something completely new. If you don't focus on that, you don't have the creativity, you don't have the innovation, and you can expect your job to disappear fairly soon. Your business stagnates, you start doing maintenance and routine works, and sooner or later, you're going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, robotics, and so on. And mainly the best young people coming out of university will not see you as useful. So you need to monitor this creativity. You need to help the creativity happen. And that is the role of a manager. A manager is a person to whom we have given a stick or a baton and who needs to decide how to use that baton. So there are different ways of using it. You need to decide, if you are managing a team, are you going to be a controlling manager? Are you going to be the policeman? Or are you going to be the orchestra conductor trying to bring people together? Of course, other people use batons differently. Some use them to inspire, to motivate you. Some will use them to dominate and destroy you, and some of them will use to help prepare you, accompany you, and transfer to you what you need to know. These are all different forms of management, and you need to decide as a manager, as a leader, what is the approach? How directive are you going to be? How controlling are you going to be? How supportive are you going to be? We've got different levels of approach, and your management, your leadership practices need to depend on your team. So depending on your team's skills, you need to decide how to do it. Your team skills, you've probably all come across at some point the old team building concept of form, storm, norm, perform. Form, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what we're supposed to do. I don't know what this is all about. Who are you? Why me? Storm, we start to get together and working together. Why are you doing that? That's my job. I'm more skilled than you at doing this. Why are you interfering in my work, and so on? We then get to a norm level, which is where we are producing regular stuff, to hopefully finish at the perform level, which is the high performance, high morale, high productivity team. Your management style has to be adapted to your team style. So if we are talking about a formatting team, you need to focus on defining, on planning, on orienting, on showing how to do things, on checking, on giving feedback. You need to be there with your team. You're running along their side. You're transferring your knowledge to them. You are assisting them in real time. When you get into the storm approach, you need to redirect, to explain, to encourage, to stop bad actions. And basically, you have to be a bit the policeman who is going to try to bring people back. Norm, you're a normal team. People know what they're supposed to do. They are doing it. You want to encourage them. You want to give them feedback. You want to show appreciation. Your role becomes largely that of the orchestra conductor, making sure that the different instruments come in at the right time and are working at the right rhythm in order to allow everybody else to follow. And then finally, we get to the perform stage, where your team knows what they're supposed to do, where your team is doing their job, and your role is a lot more backseat. It is giving them the rhythm, giving them the encouragement, being the cheerleader. You want to find the right level in order to give control to your team. You want to make sure they can decide for themselves what they're supposed to do. We like solving problems. We like having control over our destiny. We like to take on challenges and resolve them ourselves. And yet, most businesses globally seem to have come out and come back to some kind of medieval structure of kings and barons who are fighting for authority rather than actually for results. And we find these organizations that the people doing what the client want, the people who are building the widgets, who are writing the code, is a small group at the bottom with no authority, no control. And then there's an enormous group of people who is trying to control the productivity of the few really useful ones. This needs to change. This needs to change. It's not an acceptable way of proceeding, because in a hierarchical organization, we're looking at promotion instead of performance. We are promoting the wrong people. We are promoting valuable engineers to become inefficient managers. We are promoting, I was talking yesterday to someone in the education system, where the best teachers are promoted to become incompetent head teachers. People are promoted out of what they do best. And the effort to reduce cost is upset by the cost of the overhead. People are focused on compliance and not trying something new. Luckily, this is changing. We are coming to a more systemic approach to management, where we have got starting to use people based on their competency, on their knowledge, rather than on their hierarchy or their position within the organization. People are considered assets. You have got knowledge, you have got intelligence. We want you to deal with complexity, with uncertainty, with ambiguity, rather than just relying on structures. And that brings us into organizations that are structured around knowledge rather than around hierarchy of people. This is where the name of my organization, Orchestrated Knowledge, comes from. And that is the idea that your organization should be focused around the knowledge, or should be organized around the knowledge flow rather than around silos. So in a cell-based organization, I'm going to bring together my project managers as equals to discuss project management problems and how to resolve them, to support one another. We're going to create cells around specialities and around skills. The cell is a group, the cell is a team of people working together, meeting on a continuous basis, focused on solving issues and organizing work. In other words, a cell is a self-governing, focused team. You're interested, you're knowledgeable, come and help your colleagues solve their problems. That it becomes key part of your job, making your job better. Improvement is part of your job descriptions. We talk a lot about this, about empowering teams, but empowering teams frequently doesn't work because we don't give team members the power to be empowered. You need to switch them on. You need to give them the ability, the skills, the resources they need to do it. And that is what leads me to the next phase, which is creativity. Creativity, we are creative, naturally. Humans are creative. We are arguably the only species in this world that is creative. Birds still built their nest the same way as they did hundreds and presumably thousands of years ago. We try to change this regularly because we want to do things better. Creativity means I want to find better products, better resources. I want to be challenged. I want to find out how to do things. I want to keep up to speed with new technology. I want to find new ways. I'm going to fail a few times. I'm going to fail because these are small changes which are not always obvious. Okay, so if I take a simple example of small changes, the mini cassette was invented in 1979. That led in 1984 to the creation of the Sony Walkman. Different approach, 1993, the MP3 compression system got created for computers, which allowed in 2001 the Sony Walkman and MP3 to lead to the iPod, which has revolutionized the music, okay? But these were all small, insignificant steps, and it was not obvious what they were going to become at the end. And so what I am trying to do is I would like the zombies to meet the toddlers. The toddlers, an inconceivable amount of energy. I don't know if you have a toddler or if you know of one, but the level of energy, of creativity, of curiosity they have seems to be limitless. You don't know what the toddler is going to be. The toddler might grow up to be a scientist, an artist, an accountant, a freedom fighter, a politician, a homeless drug victim. We don't know. All this is possible. And they are creative and they want to do things. And when I hire an engineer, I expect the engineer to be creative and to want to improve things, because creativity is necessary for innovation. And innovation is the mother of invention. There is no progress without new inventions, without innovation, without creativity. That is where you need to go. That is where whatever you are doing, you need to go if you want your business to survive a few years into the future. So what I do when I go into a business, like as a consultant or a coach, I would like to try to identify who are the creative people in there. And so creative people are people who want to explore, people who think creatively, but also people who are willing to share their ideas, who are not shy, and also willing to listen. When they're wrong, they need to be wrong. So creativity, I need to find who are those creative people, and I need to make sure that creativity is not lost, but they have the ability to translate that into innovation. I want them to change their ideas into outcomes, into actions. So I'm looking for people who are creative, engaged, and integrated. Those are my three starting points. Curious, I want to discover new, I want to find new technologies. I want to understand better what is happening. I want to stay abreast of the new things. I want to be able to share my discoveries and my ideas and propose new ways of doing things. And I want to be integrated, respected by my team so that they will actually pay attention to these concepts and ideas. In order to find that, there are various personality systems that work. Different ones in different cases. One that I find works extremely well to find my creative people is the Big Five. The Big Five approach is basically taking 5 separate key features and measuring them on a scale. So it's not like other character systems where you are introverted or extroverted. It's not on or off. It is a scale. You're given a number, and it allows you to identify what are your strong points, what are your weak points. It is expected that if you take the Big Five test in now and again in 6 months' time, you should come up with different answers. You should have evolved. It is there to show you where you need to focus your attention. My curious, engaged, and integrated people correspond to the Big Five through various aspects of it. So anxiety, depression, and emotional volatility are between brackets here because they are negative. I run the test, I calculate the value, and I come up with different values for different people. So I've looked here at Anna and Bob. I found different scores, and looking at these scores, I can decide where would they be best placed within the organization. What should be the most efficient way? Well, I can see that Anna has got a high score integration and a low score on curious. So she'd probably be a good manager or a good team leader. Bob is very curious, wants to find new things and new solutions, is not very integrated, and is definitely not very engaged. So it probably would be best in a slight, more solitary activity, a more creative activity, such as an architecture and a designer. I use this information along with some other question I use in order to identify within a business what is the potential for creativity or innovation. And it allows me to come up with graphics such as this one. This is one that comes from real business, where I can see the flow of ideas. I'm measuring the flow of ideas. People are generally happy, there's consensus, they can express, people listen to them, they feel respected, all that is very positive. Negative aspects, they feel they don't have the access for information, they don't participate in changing, and particularly in changing of priorities. When I see this, I can already identify what are the key management issues and how management should try to involve the team members more than they are. As far as the team members are concerned, they are measured according to their desire to explore, their integration, their engagement. So every bubble here represents an individual, and you can very quickly see a big green bubble on the bottom left. That big green bubble is big because it's someone who is very much into exploring, discovering, trying new things. It's low down on the scale because they are not well integrated in the team. People don't listen to them, tend to ignore them. And it is towards the left of the screen because they're not really engaged, so they don't speak up as much. This is a highly creative person who doesn't speak up, and when they do, they don't listen. In the top right-hand corner, you can see a small brown bubble. This is the opposite. This person is not interested in changing or discovering new things. However, they speak their mind, and everybody listens and does as they're told. This is the loudmouth manager who says, we've always done it this way, keep on doing it this way, don't bother me. Another aspect that comes out of this is you notice the cluster, nearly all the bubbles are nearly all the same size. They're very close to each other. And this is typical of an organization with centralized hiring. So when you are hiring, you tend to think of people who will fit into the team. If I compare everything there is to know about any topic and everything I know about, I will quickly understand I know very little about it. When I want to hire people, when I want to build a team, I want them to fit into the team. So I'm going to start hiring people that fit in, that I can work with, that I can agree with, people who've got the same background, the same level of education, the same understanding as I have. And we build up a lot of redundant knowledge of a small area. If we were to build up a team of rebels, I'm going to start hiring people who come specifically from different backgrounds. I'm interested in hiring people from different genders, different races, different backgrounds, whatever it is, in order for them to bring a different point of view on the problem. This is the Tech Talent Charter is a British charter where companies sign up to say that they are going to work on improving diversity within their organization. Now, some people call it positive discrimination. It is not about favoring minorities. Positive discrimination is about challenging your prejudice. It is not because this person comes from a different background that they are not as good as or better than you are. And challenging that prejudice, and we've all got it. We've all got it, okay? As soon as someone walks into the interview room, you have judged their hairstyle, you have judged their clothes, you judged their accent, you've decided if there's someone you can work with or not. So build up a team of rebels and be aware of the fact that over time they might come together. So they start assimilating, they start becoming more alike and more often agreeing with one another. That can be managed. Reed Hastings is the founder and CEO of Netflix, and he's established a culture in which employees do not ask for approval to make decisions. They're not limited by how much budget they're allowed to spend. They're not expected to ask for approval. What they are expected to do is have a good understanding of the context, talk to people with different perspectives, be aware of the different options, and take responsibility for the choice they have made. Of course, you need to building, having everybody playing their own game will never lead you to success. So you need some kind of structure. I'm a very big fan of SFIA, SFIA, which is a framework that allows you to organize skills and capabilities and experience of different individuals, as well as of different roles and jobs within the business. It allows you to make sure the right person is in the right place. It also allows you to manage and career plans and training needs. And the best thing about it is that if you're a small organization, it's free. That's the best thing. So this brings me now to Vitruvian Quality. Vitruvian Quality is an approach I have developed with the idea of bringing the knowledge of the ancients into modern day. Marcus Vitruvius Polio, maybe he wasn't called this, maybe he was called Lutrus Victorius Cordo, or maybe he was called Mamura, we don't know, was born somewhere before Christ and died at least 15 years of our era, we're not quite sure. There's this one picture of him, which maybe that is his likeness, probably not. He is considered the father of architecture, even though he's only known for one building, which is the Basilica Fao in northeast Italy, which is destroyed without a trace. But what he did do is he left us 5 volumes on architecture and explaining the ideal proportions that you need in architecture and what quality means. And it brings down, no matter how big a temple you want to build, the proportions have to be grasped by the human. And the human makes the ideal proportions, which is why he was used to create what is called the Vitruvian. He said, every structure, every product needs to respect 3 key principles: firmitatis, utilitatis, velostatis, stability, utility, and beauty. Stability, your product, your structure, your service needs to be stable. It needs to resist wind and rain. When bad time comes, it needs to survive. If you've got an electricity failure, your computers continue running. If you have got Brexit, your export continues to work. Things are built to survive. Second one is utility. Obviously, your product, your structure needs to be useful. It needs to provide value to your clients who will be using it. And then a thing that we often forget, certainly in the IT industry, your product needs to be desirable, being attractive. This is something Steve Jobs understood. Bill Gates didn't, which is why no one ever queued overnight to get an upgrade to Windows. You want to make it desirable somehow. Your product, whatever you are building or delivering, has to have a combination of these 3 principles. And that concept was so fundamental that Vitruvius's texts for architectura were used and recognized as foundation inspiration for the Renaissance, where they started building on this concept that the proportions repeat themselves and create it. In the 20th century, it was reused by Christopher Alexander in his 2 books, in which he explains how, through a language of patterns, we can start to develop things that are consistent, coherent, from the smallest to the biggest, and are understandable at every level. That was inspiration for a book published in the end of the 20th century, in which entered the concept of patterns and object-oriented software. I don't need to explain to you what are the principles of patterns. I'm sure, I think that it's fairly well known. It is something which is done in engineering. It is something which is done in service delivery. It is something which is not necessarily done at the management level. And this is where the Vitruvian quality comes in. I would like to try to build a quality system within the organization which is coherent, consistent, and stays in place. I want to understand, based on the jobs an individual is doing, how this satisfies the organization. So we're going to take all the aspects of a quality system and bring them together. I also happen to like the squaring the circle concept, which is in Da Vinci's drawing of this, which allows me to use it as an additional illustration. We start with the mission statement. You exist. Why does your business exist? What's behind it? And don't tell me that it's to please clients or to make money. That's not true. If your only business, and I had someone a while back telling me that their business objective, like everybody else, was to make money. And I said, that's easy, then let's fire the employees and sell the assets. Okay, that's not what it is, okay? Banks didn't start just in order to make money. They started in order to help people. That mission statement needs to be clearly communicated. It needs to be visible so that it stays in place and doesn't get lost. It will impact and influence the vision. Typically, when I say vision, people will talk to me about some marketing sentence, which they might or might not believe, which is basically saying we want to be the best, we want to provide cutting edge technology, whatever it is. I'd like you to think about the vision. Why would a prospect want to work with you in 2, 5, 10 years' time? Why would you want to work for this company in 2, 5, 10 years' time when you know you can earn more money somewhere else? What are the things that want you to stay there, in taking into consideration the mission, of course? From that, building the policies. The fewer policies you have, the better it is. The policies are identifying the non-negotiable. If you're working here, you have to respect these things. Okay, policies stay in place for years. They have to be set at a high enough level so that you understand, that every employee understands what is the impact of not respecting the environmental rules, what is the impact of not respecting the work ethic rules. Policy tells you what is not negotiable and what will be the consequences if you don't do as we say. And nobody's above the policy, okay? The CEO is not above the policy. General management has to obey the policy. Mission, the vision, the policy, we can build the strategy, which is how are we going to translate this into results? 2 questions. What are you going to do? And what are you not going to do? How are you going to avoid making the mistakes that others make? Below that, we have got A, which is not accidentally one of the knees of my Vitruvian man. The technology is there. to help you to support everything else. The role of technology is to make life better for the people doing the work, just as the role of process is there to help and to support people. These are the basics that support you, that help you to understand what it is you should be doing, and helps it make it easier for you. If your process or your technology does not make it easier to produce quality products, they're wrong and need to be replaced. The center of gravity of the business is training. How do you use the tools you have correctly? How do you do this? You need training, otherwise people are going to take these wonderful technological things that you've developed and use them wrong, creating more work and more defects. And supporting at every level, which is where we come down to the feet, is the continual improvement. Continual improvement is how can we make sure that we are going to be more efficient, more effective in future than we are today? How can I create better products? How can I make my processes better? How can I reduce waste, rework, and redundancy? Outside of that, we've now got the bit that get forgotten when we talk about management. Roles and responsibility. How do you define the right person for the right job? How do you communicate the roles, responsibility, authority, career path, and skills progression expected or performed for each individual? I am regularly, when I'm doing workshops, I am asking people what is their role, and a majority of people respond by giving me their job title. I don't care about your job title. What is your role within the organization? What are you responsible for providing to your business, to your organization, to your customers? What is your role, not what is your title? Feedback is coming. Feedback is critical for quality improvement. I want rapid feedback, okay? I am strongly opposed to yearly performance reviews, where your manager has gone back and looked at everything wrong you've done for the past year, and you look back and look at all the good stuff you've done for the past year, and you go into your manager and you say, I should get a pay rise or a promotion because your manager says, no, you're lucky not to be fired because, and you talk for a while and then you agree on a salary increase that was already previously agreed in the budgeting rounds. Okay, yearly performance review is demoralizing and destructive. I want feedback today if I do something. The feedback should become part of your culture. The culture is the way people behave when management isn't watching. The culture is what people are doing, whether it is measured or not. And so understanding the culture very often involves understanding what it is that staff don't want to tell management. And that is why it becomes important here when you do a culture review to have an independent, objective person who can do a confidential review and give feedback as to the reality without getting people into trouble. There is something I did years ago, which was an astonishment report, where every new starter was asked after 6 months to give a presentation on what had astonished them in the organization, good and bad. What were the differences between what you expected when you came in and what you found in reality? It's a wonderful tool if people feel comfortable within this context to speak the truth and to communicate and freely. Communication has to be open. I would prefer people follow the chain of command if it does exist, but you have to be able to bypass it. You have to be able to talk to the person at the top. You have to be able to talk to the people on the factory floor. More important, you have to be able to listen. There is no communication if you are not listening. So you want to be able to speak openly. You want to be able to say what you think. The next step, which is probably closely related to communication, is education. And education is completely different from training. Personally, I think we spend far too much time and money training people, not enough time and money educating them. Educating them to understand their responsibility, towards their clients, to understand how to improve client satisfaction, how to develop new products, how to report that the process isn't working. You want them to know, you want them to understand the purpose, you want them to be able to make rational, acceptable judgments. And then all this comes down finally to the tasks and procedures, where because I've got all this in place, the activities that I am doing, the mission, and I understand how I am helping the mission and the vision of the business. So all these things are working together. They are building on each other in order to give a constructive, coherent, consistent message that everybody understands so that everybody can be effective. I want to compare this very briefly to the concept of fractal management. Okay, we talked earlier on about how every component is dependent on the whole thing. This is true at the management level too. And if we have got the management according to a principle like Vitruvian Quality management, you are going to find that people know what they're supposed to be doing, determine the best approach, and every activity that they do will cover the whole aspect. Okay, so when I'm given something to do, I need to analyze the requirements. I need to understand what is expected as well as what is requested. I need to plan for the resources, the time, the budget I need. I need to be able to estimate how long it is taking to take, what are the dependencies, and so on and so on. So every activity becomes a reflection in small of the whole process and the whole structure. Something that is particularly easy to put in place, it needs to be designed. You need to bring together the concepts of engineering and creation. You need to put in place a structure that allows people to create without going against business principles. You've got the engineering and creation together so that you've got the leadership that will help you create, will give you the resources, will accept that you make mistakes, will listen to your ideas, and the management which is there to provide you the resources in order to achieve the results. It requires destruction. It requires breaking things. That's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you know what you're breaking. I've got in my notes here, it says there is no Vishnu without Shiva, there is no Odin without Loki, there is no Prometheus without Perseus, there is no yin without yang, there is no order without chaos, there is no positive without negative, there is no creation without destruction. Be destructive, be disruptive, be creative. Understand that the mission and vision statements are establishing the direction you are going in. Your responsibilities towards the business and the customers are clearly communicated and understood so that we can now have creativity defining future engineering and engineering validating the creativity. We achieve that through the design spiral. The design spiral is that when you're trying to create something new, you start with the creative. Think about what you're trying to achieve, diverge, come up with completely varied solutions and options. It's an open brainstorm. The more ideas you can come up, the more you can diverge and conceptualize, the more successful you will be. You then challenge and critique the different options that you've thought of. You have a look, will this work? Why not? And so on. You go down and you identify what are the risks related to the few that you believe will work so that you can prioritize things. Define now your focus, your goals, create your plan so that now we are finally at the building phase where I'm building answers. I'm bringing everything back to the one solution. I'm converging, while just now was diverging. I'm going to control. I'm going to measure the results. I am going to compare the results. I'm going to analyze and report and make sure that we are progressing. And then I'm going to start again. And I will go around the spiral as many times as necessary in order to achieve a valid result. I'm going to really come back to something that everybody talks about and few people actually bother understanding. Shewhart in 1939 created the cyclical concept for manufacturing and production, in which you've got specification, production, inspection. That was changed by Deming, who created something similar where you have got design the product with appropriate tests, make the product and test, sell the product, and then test the product in service through market research. That was translated by an unknown Japanese person into something that's called PDCA, which Deming did not particularly like. However, he did create the cycle for learning and improvement, which instead of focusing on the manufacturing aspects, replaced checking by studying, which goes deeper than just ticking off boxes. Later on, SPA-350 was created, which adds a couple of steps to this. So it's got, before the plan, determine the goals and the targets. Before doing the work, engage in the necessary education and training. So it gives you a much stronger, you study, then you analyze, you plan, and you do. Studying, looking, diverging, trying to get use creative tools, use different approaches, brainstorming, mind maps, try different ways of developing things in order to get an original idea. Listen to people, build on what they say. One creative tool that I like is was developed inside Toyota, and it's the A3 coaching tool. And the idea here is that on one sheet of paper, granted a large sheet of paper, an A3, we are going to define the problem, the solution, and the follow-up. So it starts off by identifying what it is we're trying to achieve. I don't know why this isn't moving. Okay, there it is. What it is we're trying to achieve, what is the background, why do we think this is a problem that needs resolution? Document what are the conditions, the consequences, the measurements that tell us this is a problem. Then break that down, start building the goals and the outcomes that are expected from here. PowerPoint has decided to stop moving. right? There it is, okay. Define the root cause analysis. How do you know what is the real problem rather than the symptoms? And based on that, we can then move on to the other side of the page, where we have got the proposed measures, the changes, the improvements we want to put in place, the corrective actions we want to define, as well as the activities necessary to achieve the results we expect, and the follow-up activities in order to control that we have done the right thing and that we've achieved it. Coaching with the A3 is an ongoing process. Keep on coming back, revisiting it and updating it in order to get to the right approach. So it's a work in progress. It is not neat, it's not clean, but it gives you the full problem and resolution on one sheet of paper and allows you to understand the relationship. And you'll be glad to know I have finally reached the conclusions. Measurement. If you are going to collect data, if you are going to measure something, understand before you do it what you are going to do with it. The data on its own is useless. But if you use the data to translate it, to move into wisdom, wisdom I am defining here as your innate skill to pick the right solution, the right approach to something you've never seen before. So you've got here an option to suddenly find the solution, a prediction. If you don't go through the information, the knowledge, the understanding, you're going to run into trouble. You've probably heard the expression, measure twice, cut once. Are you going to use it the other way around? Think twice, measure once. There's some basic rules here before measuring. To understand, why do you want to do this? Who is going to use it? What is the cost of these measurements? Why is someone asking for pointless measurements like performance metrics? And remember, every measurement you put out there is open to corruption and to goal diversion. If you are putting out a measurement, people will focus on satisfying the metric rather than satisfying the customer. And so you will run into trouble. Okay? You start, it's the budgeting exercise where you are pushing off expenses into the next quarter. It is the school that is suspending bad students shortly for their exams so that the school's rating will remain good. So as soon as you put in place a measurement that corresponds to a reward or punishment system, it will be corrupted. People will cheat. Encourage feedback. Coming back here again to Reed Hastings from Netflix. Reed requires feedback from everyone at any time, in public or in private. If you think something is wrong, you need to say so. When you give feedback, you have to aim to assist, not just shoot them down because it's rubbish, okay? You want to provide feedback that is actionable. Well, I really didn't like your presentation. Okay, what am I supposed to do with that? Give me feedback that is actionable. When you receive feedback, appreciate the fact that someone is giving you feedback and is going to the trouble. There are two kinds of feedback. There's positive feedback, which is good for your ego for a few minutes. It's nice for someone to pat you on the back and say, well done. And there is constructive feedback. If people are telling you what you did wrong, use that information. It is useful information. So appreciate it, understand it. Then you can accept or discount. Maybe they didn't know something. Maybe they got it wrong. That's okay. You don't have to accept everything, but you do have to accept everything. So, right, I know I've got some questions out here. They should be showing up. They're not showing up.
We can also unmute.
Okay, I've got them on my screen. I've got them on my screen here, so I will read what I've got here. Please cite cases where these ideas work best and numbers for productivity and quality if possible. Where they work best in an environment where people are trying to produce something, are trying to satisfy clients, not just do as they are told, but actually try to build a relationship with the clients that will allow them to be more open. Ideally, I want your clients to not want to look elsewhere. I want your clients not to want to look elsewhere because they trust you so much. You want to have this level of mutual trust. Numbers for productivity and quality. I don't even know how you define quality, so I cannot give you numbers. If you want to be the cheapest, if that's your main quality, that's fine by me. If you want to be the first on the market, great. If you want zero defect products, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I don't know how you define quality. And as long as I don't know that, I cannot give you suggestion on how to improve it. What you describe seems to be essentially the same as the book Humanocracy. This has many real case studies, numeric business results, very specific practical tools which can be implemented. Is Humanocracy close to what you are describing? It sounds that way to me. So I know that the person who recommended the book Humanocracy to me is on the line, or at least was at the beginning. Maybe he's given up by now, but I've got the book. I have started reading it. I don't feel I am far enough in it to be able to give you a response at this point as to how much overlap there is. How do the flat structures cells work with the chain of command communication? Within every cell, I would place a facilitator. I'm not saying a manager or reporter, a facilitator who makes sure you stay on topic. And as a project manager, I am going to sit in the project management cell, work with the other project managers to identify how we can solve our project management specific issues among ourselves. But I will also be in my project cell with the people that I am working with. So I have a management role in this, which means I have to make sure that people are motivated and understand what they have to do and have the resources and skills to do it. And I'm going to sit with them to hear what are the project-specific issues on a regular basis and identify it. But I'm also going to go in another cell. Because of my background, I think that I can help in the finance cell. So I'm going to sit in the finance. So the chain of command is no longer a change of command. It is a flow of information through the cells, through the people who are participating in multiple ones. So the questions that I align, I will, I guess now, before I hand over, I am going to ask you to please, if you haven't gone to the Menti platform, could you please go there and give me the feedback? There are a number of questions on feedback, and I would very much appreciate if you could answer them.
Okay,
Now,
we've got the capability of people to unmute themselves. There are two questions in the queue. One is from Agapi Svolu, sorry, who says, if process doesn't equate to progress, where would you start from? And then we've got a question from Chris
people.
Little after that.
So, hello, Agapi. Good to hear from you again. I have a long-standing relationship with Agapi, and we were both process improvement consultants for a long time. So I know where her question is coming from. Process is useful if it supports the people. Process is not useful if it satisfies a standard and creates more bureaucracy. So process is good. I'm not going to argue that you should not have process. You definitely should have it. The question is, how much does your process make it easier for people to produce quality and to progress? If it produces bureaucracy, it's useless. It's a waste of time. If it just makes it more complicated and I don't understand. And again, process for me has to follow education. This is not bureaucracy we're asking for you. I am asking you to do this paperwork, which is going to take 2 hours of your time, because if something goes wrong with this product, in 6 months, in a year's time, we need to be able to improve it. And that's where this document is going to become critical and why you have to write documentation. It's not bureaucracy. It is there to support people in the future. So process is important, but it is there to make people easier. I don't know if that has satisfied Agapi.
Yes, Peter, thank you.
Okay. There was another question. Hello?
Yes, it's Chris Little, if you can hear me.
Yes.
I was very interested in your presentation. Thank you very much. I recognise lots of the themes because I've been involved in management or the receiving end of management for 40 years. I'm interested to know what you'd say about scale. How would it apply in an organization of 10, 100, 1,000 or 10,000 people?
It's a good question. I think it's a bit like the pyramids. Okay. The bottom level of the pyramid is not one gigantic stone. It is the same stones as on the top, just organized slightly differently. So I've taken a lot from the Netflix book that I recommended, so the No Rules Rules, where Netflix has got no policies and has got well-defined responsibilities rather than authority. So you get the authority that matches your responsibility. Netflix worldwide works in the same way. So Netflix in India can decide to invest in making a new program or a film or a series aimed at the Indian market without asking budgetary permission from anyone. As the person responsible for animation on Netflix, I can decide to produce a new movie, a new animated film, and it is my responsibility to do it. I have the built-in authority to do it. And if I get it wrong, that is considered as a lesson to be learned. And they ask people who have made mistakes, who have failed at different things, to give presentations at different levels within the organization, at board level, to all the staff together as to what they learned from their mistake, so that the others don't need to repeat it. So it's a level of repeating information at different levels, which works in large organizations. And Netflix, I don't know how many they are, but there's 1,000 employees, and it's a global multicultural organization. So Netflix in India, Netflix in Japan, and Netflix in Mexico are all doing their own thing without necessarily listening or asking permission from the boss. But the mission is clearly stated, the vision is clearly stated, the responsibilities are clearly stated, and all the way down they have gone through identifying who should be doing what and taking responsibility for it. Does that answer your question, Chris?
I think it does, actually. It ties back into the fractal slide you have
Yes,
as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Could I come in here?
By the way, I've been dealing with management for 45 years, so I beat you slightly there.
Right. I'd just like to come in briefly, because I was at a meeting yesterday of the Extreme Tuesday Club, in which David Rees told a really virtually incredible war story of, developers being brought in, a big team of developers being brought in by a company and told, well, basically the software's finished, but we've got a very hard deadline to meet, and we want you to get all the bugs out. So they were very much a victim rather than an actual partner in the process. And somebody called Ron Quantel was in the audience and spoke up and said, look, I've developed this method called FAST, sometimes known as fast agile. But he doesn't really like the term agile. It's anything but a method, really. It's very much along the lines that you've been talking about, in which people join teams because they feel that there's a need for them there, or they can contribute something, and it's extremely fluid. And he said he's seen this scale in various organizations, which I can't now recall, but beyond 1,000 people. And it sounds very much as if this kind of Netflix model is very similar. So that just a thought. XTC meets again on Tuesday, the 19th of January. You can find it on Meetup, and if you'd be interested to hear more from Rod Quantel, you can come there, or you can have a look at fastagile.io and get some information in advance. Now, I believe David Mazel has a question for us on ISO 27000.
After that, I've got a question online here, which I'll answer after this one.
Thank you.
So,
David?
Yes, David?
Oh, he's asking me to ask on his behalf. Okay, he's saying the PDCA or PDCA cycle is part of ISO 27000. So what can we do to scale a real security improvement at IoT scale?
One of my arguments, I'm a member of the CQI, the Chartered Quality Institute, which is very much involved in ISO standards in the UK. And one of my arguments with them is that they still continue talking about Deming's PDCA. But, PDCA is currently in every ISO standard since, trying to remember when Appendix L was created. And the way it has been defined, Appendix L was 2005, early 2005, which is the standard for ISO standards. And so PDCA is referenced and the same structure is referenced in it. The way it is implemented is, first and foremost, is at the senior management level that has to provide leadership. And this for me is a critical understanding that if you want to do this correctly, I need senior management to provide leadership. Now, I'm glad they used the word. I don't know if they did it on purpose or not. People tend to confuse management and leadership. So management is generally the budget and understanding where we are and what's happening. And management is someone you have to obey. A leader is someone who is focused on the future, who is focused on an idea, and who is going to get there. A leader is someone you want to follow, not someone you have to obey. And that makes an enormous difference. And the way the ISO standards have been using this is that the leadership has to be there from the very top. And the leadership has to be visible from the very top. In other words, leaderships are participating, are looking at results, are asking for feedback, are trying to see what needs to be improved. And it works along the cycle in the sense that it comes back up. So the people at the bottom who are doing the work have to make recommendations on what's working, what's not working, and how to improve it. It's a lot closer to the Toyota systems than most companies that talk about PDCA, because it's really the top giving the leadership, giving the inspiration, giving the direction, and the people at the bottom getting the return, saying why this isn't working or why it is working. I hope that answers your question, David. Okay. I don't know if, right. Right, I'll read the one I've got online here. How would you advise involvement of client in formulating requires to independent providers and continuing involvement? So I'm understanding the question to be, should my client be involved in the requirements to my supplier? I don't know if whoever answered the question can confirm that that is what you meant. Anybody still there?
You can unmute yourself if you want to respond to.
You can type it into the. Okay. One of the client requirements, one of the things that I believe we should be doing more of, whatever business we are in, is understanding clearly what is the job to be done. So instead of defining what the client wants or says they want, understand what is the job they're actually trying to achieve and what do they want to get out of your product. The traditional example is nobody wants a 5mm drill, but lots of people want a 5mm hole. I would push this even a little bit further and say they don't really want a hole, they want a curtain rail or whatever. What is the client actually trying to do? Do you understand the client's business? I recommend that you read your client's trade magazines, that you go to your client's trade shows, that you understand your client's business as well as they do, so that you can help them solve the problem. If you have a clear understanding of what is the job your client is trying to do and what they want to achieve with the product they've described to you, you should be able to translate that into what you want as outcome from your supplier. And the outcome from your supplier has to be clearly and completely documented. I want to know in detail what it is you want. Don't use random stupid words like easy to use. I don't know what that means. What's easy for you might be incredibly difficult for me. I don't know. So be specific in what you're doing. I know that Tom Gill was on the line earlier on. I don't know if he still is. I strongly recommend you have a look at his documentation on requirements and the quantification of requirements, where he is turning the requirements into measurable, quantified, verifiable data. And the idea is not that you want the precise exact measurements, but that you actually think it through to the point that you understand what it is you're actually asking. I don't know what a quick response time was. I don't know what that means. However, if I put down in the requirements 5 milliseconds, that gives me an idea of what is meant. And if my supplier then provides me a response time of 6 milliseconds, I need to determine whether this 1 millisecond is a failure or is acceptable. Does it actually impact the end user? Will they notice the difference? So I hope that helps. I'm hearing background noises, so I'm guessing somebody is ready to answer the question.
Can you hear the questioner now?
Yes, well, I hear somebody.
Well, I've been in the game even longer than you. My first tangle with programming was 56 years ago. But a very formative meeting 2 years into my working life was with a team from IBM and our company, which had 3 different activities. One was making topographical maps. The other was looking at soils and growing crops on it. And the third was looking at the rocks beneath and looking for mineral resources. And none of our people could communicate with the IBM people, nor could they communicate with us. And so I realized then that formulating and communicating requirements was a huge gap. Now, this was back in 1970, and it's improved somewhat. But my question was more, our daughter is now a software developer, and she is plagued by poor communications between the clients, talking to salespeople who don't have the skills to pass on the requirements and involve the clients in the ongoing production of the intended software. I think it should be a continuous interaction and an interrelationship so that the communication is continuing and not spasmodic with a long document at the beginning and then silence. And that's the kind of problem that I was trying to address to you.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. And trust me, it's not always got better. I have been working in particular with the idea that a Dutchman is writing down the requirements in English, which are then being read by a Romanian who is going to try to translate it for their Indian subcontractor. And every step of the way is a translation and losing predictability. And that is where I think, again, I'm sorry if I'm plugging Tom's book like this, but Tom Gilb's approach of translating this into numbers, into data, is so important. The numbers are understood over the world, so they're easy translated. One of the strengths, one of the missing strengths, should I say, of agile methodologies is the concept that you should be in contact with your client every day, that your client should participate to some extent in your daily stand-up meetings and so on. And I see very few companies that bother it. Okay, they've got the Scrum Master who is going to try to solve things by talking to the customer representative, who's another software engineer, who is then going to talk to the salesperson. That's not what it's about. The idea is to cut down this chain, speak directly to people, get through to them, okay? We don't need these long chains of communication. And I think this is one of the Okay. Yes, I'm going to say this is one of the benefits of COVID. Okay, one of the big things that's come out of COVID-19 is that people have discovered they can work with someone at the other side of the world from their desktop, and that you don't have to fly to Los Angeles for a meeting. You can do it on Zoom, you can do it on Microsoft Teams, you can do it on whatever tool you want. We've suddenly been kicked into the new technology to say, let's talk. We can actually, don't write me emails. I get enough of those. Let's talk, which is why the little, I've got the little QR code on there that if you want to talk, scan the little QR code in the bottom corner of my slides and choose a time that suits you. But you need to speak to the people, and beyond customers, speak to users. One step further.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you very much, Peter. I think we've come to the end of our time.
You've suddenly popped up.
Yes, I think we've come to the end of our time. I've been here the whole time, but I've stayed out of the way as much as I could. Tom Gilb is still on board, and he's asking me to point out that many of his talks about how to do requirements in a scientific manner are available via the BCS SPA YouTube channel or playlist. So if you don't know where that is, have a look at our home website, which is bcs-spa.org. As I said, you're very welcome to return next month when we're going to have this talk on IT in humanitarian efforts. And the month after that, being the month of Women in IT, we have International Women's Day or something like that. We have a talk about how, the practical parts of achieving inclusion and equality. So I'm looking forward to that very much. Right now, I'm going to close the meeting and stop the broadcast. And I'd like those members of the BCS SPA committee who are on the call, please to stay behind. Thanks.